Ropers, are you ready to step up your game? My online course, The Basics of Roping, is built for beginners, but packed with tools to help ropers of all levels sharpen their skills. With over 2 hours of instruction, frame-by-frame swing breakdowns, when to turn your hand over to keep your loop open, when and where to let go of your rope so you can get the horns in the middle of that loop, over 15 dummy drills to simulate real-life runs, you'll have everything you need to improve. Go to charliecrawford.training and follow the link under the course tab to get started today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's NRS Tip of the Month. So I like going over equipment checks, especially when it comes springtime. I remember when I was growing up, especially in the Northwest, have a lot of hair on your horses. It's a cold winter. You start roping a little bit more come March, April. The hair starts shedding off your horses. Your cinches start getting crusty. Bottom of your saddle pads are starting to get hair and sweat and everything. So just giving it a good maintenance check every once in a while too, where, making sure that when you're competing, first off, you're staying safe where nothing's going to break and get you in a bind. And another thing is making sure that there's some little things that may be going on that doesn't cost you money. So I thought, man, what better way to go in and talk about equipment check than having president of EcoBrand, Ken Bray, on. Ken, thanks for coming on.
You bet. Glad to be here.
Appreciate it, partner. So especially with your involvement with EcoBrand, all the equipment that you guys have, also with Martin Saddlery, these are things that I see a lot of times during the weekends at some of the clinics where, you might see some guys that have been going to some jackpots, but there's bale and twine holding the front and back cinched together. And, there's some certain things to where, first off, safety, and then second of all, like, we don't want these little things costing you money as well.
Yes, sir.
So I like to go over let's start with head stalls first. If we're looking at a head stall, what are some fits that you like? What are some things to be looking for, be mindful for as we're looking at our head stall? I like to start off with just first off, maybe the difference between Chicago screws or leather ties as we're tying this head stall to the purchase ring of your bit.
You can see both of those used a lot. If you do use Chicago screws, would really encourage you to, whether it's leather ties or Chicago screws, just to make sure that the bit attachments or the buckle attachments are secure. If you're using Chicago screws, it's always a great idea to put shoe polish or something like that on there that helps solidify that Chicago screw from backing out, and always check it before you ride every time.
That would probably be one of the best visuals I think that we've all ever seen would have been Charmaine James at the NFR on Scamper.
Exactly. Not all horses are like Scamper, though.
And not all horses are like Scamper, though, especially when you're trying to rope a steer and you get dally and that happens, yeah. Yeah, things can get hairy quick.
We all get excited about riding and especially getting to compete, but it's just a simple check that makes sense every time.
Yeah. What about bits? What's an easy fit that you feel like for most common bits? How do you like to make sure your bit fits in the horse's mouth?
Generally speaking, whenever you adjust the bridle, the buckles on your head stall in your horse's mouth, at least a wrinkle. Mm-hmm. Two's maybe too many, but a wrinkle in their mouth, and then on your curb chain, also to check the integrity of the curb chain. The buckles on the curb chain, is the leather dry and brittle, but the adjustment is basically 2 fingers from the base of their chin to the curb chain.
What about tie downs? So like the fit that I kind of like to have as far as the head stall fitting with the nose band going over the horse's nose, I like it just be a little bit under the cheekbones. A lot of times I'll see where they're so long, they're almost going over the nose where it could not that it's really blocking a lot of air off, but just a little bit low, where then you can see where the tie down and the bit sometimes will rub the horse's cheeks raw.
Yeah, it's hitting the happy spot right there, isn't it? So, you don't want to cut off the ear, but also the way God made their nose, that part of their nose is generally softer. So you want to move it up so that it's just below the bone that runs along their cheek and above that soft spot of their nose.
Now, what about the tie-down strap? What kind of equipment or what kind of material do you recommend for the tie-down strap from the D-ring of the cinch to the tie-down?
Well, nylon is used, biothane is used, and leather is used as well. All of them work fine. Biothane may be the most durable. It stays soft where nylon can get hard underneath there where the connection of the tie-down strap connects to your cinch. Leather can do the same thing. It can get hard. A lot of sweat collects down there in that particular area. So biothane is probably the most affordable and safest choice. It doesn't get hard. It lasts forever, and it's tough.
Yeah. Another thing I see a lot of times on the weekends too, as clinics, is guys that have snaps from the tie down to and snapping it to the ring of the tie down. And the only reason I tell everyone, it's a personal preference. I'm just not a fan of it, just because it's another thing that could break, another thing that could get loose. And like I say, I'm just trying to think of anything that you could think of that during a chance of what could cost you money, I want to eliminate a lot of those factors. And snaps have been something I've seen either on the reins or on the tie down that I've seen where they've come loose and come off. And that's where I just like straight contact, from point A to point B.
I agree. I prefer that as well. So the Conway buckle attachment of the tie-down strap to the tie-down is what I prefer. If you are one that likes to have a snap that connects to the tie-down and then also down to the cinch with your tie-down strap, just always check the integrity of the snap. Brass.
Check the spring, too, to see how loose that spring may be getting on your snap.
Right.
If it's keeping it closed or if it's staying open, things like that as well, too.
Check the integrity of the snap, but then also check the integrity of the material. Stainless steel or brass is going to last way longer and be more dependable, more durable, safer than anything that may be like zinc die cast or other materials that corrode.
What about certain keepers from the tie down to the breast collar? What are some things you would recommend? And what are some things you've seen as well?
Are you talking about the keeper that would attach to the center D of your breast collar?
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's just such a insurance policy. I think too many ropers do not use it, or people that ride with the tie down do not use it. It's a simple little thing. You just put a loop on the center of your breast collar. Those things are available by us and others, or you can make your own. But it's just a way that keeps that horse whenever he puts his head down from that tie down, allowing a front foot to come in, or if your horse trips and stumbles during a run, gets a foot over the tie-down strap, can cause a really big wreck. It's a simple thing everybody should do.
I agree. And it's one of those things when we were going over my saddle and I was looking at mine and I'm like, all right, let's put it in order. Because it's one of those things I've overlooked. I've used to have them on before, and it's one of those things I kind of just, as I got older, forgot to look at. And like I say, once you said that, especially with my kids riding, it was like, all right, yeah, we're getting one of those put on every breast collar. So we already put an order in. So now let's talk saddles. As we talk about fitting certain things, checking latigos. I know leather, making sure we want to make sure the latigos and things like that on our cinches, hobble straps, Blevin buckles. So what are some things like, let's just start with, say, latigos, between the cinch on the right and on the left on both sides. What are some things that you always look for?
On the latigos, latigo is a great material. It's long lasting. It is a material that is built to stand up for the job that it's used for, but it doesn't last forever. So too often, especially people on the offside, don't pay attention to the connection crease point where the cinch connects to the D of your saddle. So just check that make sure that it's soft and supple, that the integrity of the latigo, if that's what you're using, is a latigo leather billet or latigo or off latigo side, and to make sure that it's not hard, dry, brittle, and then certainly not torn, because they will tear at that point at some time. And if you are someone that prefers to use a nylon latigo or off billet, same way on that. Check the integrity of that material, because a lot of times they're not just all nylon, they're polypropylene, and they can get really hard, dry, and brittle too.
Yeah, I've seen that. What about the hobble between your front and back cinch? What's some materials you've seen, and what do you recommend?
Well, one, on the fit, too many people have them too long, especially if you're pulling up your back cinch for a roping horse. There's a lot of pressure on the back cinch. You don't want that to slide back into their flank. and, irritate the horse, get you bucked off. But, generally about 2.5, 3 inches is plenty long for that, depending. And I gave you that list of lengths because the type of cinch that you use and the shape of your back cinch matters on the length of that strap. But my preference on that, again, is biothane. It's really durable. It's really tough. Whenever you put a stainless steel buckle on a keeper for your back cinch, you can be sure that that's going to last a long time. It's going to stay, the integrity of that material is going to stand up to what it's used for. A lot of times those are nylon or polypropylene. A lot of times they have, are put together with a zinc die-cast buckle. Those buckles corrode. The integrity of the nylon strap or the polypropylene strap might be good, but check that buckle because those buckles break and corrode, and then you're going to have a wreck. And the same way with leather. Leather's great. It works great, but you might need to keep a little oil or some conditioner on that because it will get hard and brittle. A lot of sweat drips off the horse's belly, especially if you're using them a lot. And you just want to make sure the integrity of that, because it's a simple little, cheap little item that serves such a huge purpose.
Mm-hmm. Great. What about back cinches? So what I mean by that is there's, I've seen a lot of them sometimes at the clinics where they might be 2 or 3 inches wide, real thin back cinches. And, you see some of them calf ropers, and they've got a big wide back cinch. Head horses pulling a lot of weight, heel horses dallying, taking a lot of hits. What is some of the width that you kind of recommend for heading and heeling, breakaway and things like that for, as we talk about why are some wider and thinner than others on them back cinches?
Well, they're wider because whenever you for roping events, you really engage the back cinch. You pull it up tight. So a wider back cinch disperses more of that pressure across a wider area, as opposed to, you mentioned, like a 2 or 2.5 inch, really is like putting a belt around their belly and cinching it up really tight, uncomfortable. So basically a 7.5 inch wide back cinch is what you should use for team roping. Calf ropers, at least that big, sometimes 8 inches.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because they're taking a lot of hit right there on that back, ain't they? And the heel horses, for some of them bigger, you think about the NFR, them steers 650, big, strong, they're taking a lot of hit right there, huh?
When they shut down the run, there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. And then what about your Blevins buckles? We talked about that. What are some things to keep track of on that to where the leather hooks to those Blevin buckles?
Yeah, so the stirrup buckles the buckles you use on your stirrup leather where you can change the adjustment on your stirrup. Sometimes those buckles can spread out, so keep an eye on that. We've seen it; it's happened. It's reported all the time about accidents that happen whenever the Blevins buckle or the stirrup change buckle moves out of position, and then there's no stirrup left. The stirrup comes down, or you're in the middle of a run, you're standing up in your saddle, and the stirrup completely gives way. You fall up underneath your horse. It's just bad accidents happen. It's a simple thing to check, but those are typically metal and a tinny type metal generally, and they can spread out. So just keep an eye on it.
And then stirrup leathers.
Stirrup leathers, over time, it's one of the things that you want to maintenance whenever you check your saddle, clean your saddle, make sure that they stay soft and supple. But the holes in those stirrup leathers can stretch sometimes or get ripped out. Make sure that the integrity of that stirrup leather is in a position so that whenever you do get into the middle of a competitive run or you're just riding, that stirrup doesn't give way.
And then I've seen a lot of times too where people don't keep enough track. And I've felt it too, especially if you get a new saddle or if you get new latigos, making sure to check them front cinches once it gets tight is the D-rings between the front and back cinch when you're tying your tie down and your breast collar down to it. What are some things that you want to make sure of when a guy's done getting cinched up on them D-rings?
Well, a lot of times, most of us, we use the same saddle on different horses, and different horses cinch differently. So whenever you pull your saddle up tight, just make sure that center ring in your cinch is lined up in the center of their belly, because if you use a tie-down strap or if you have a breast collar strap that comes down and connects to your cinch, that there's not a rub area that's going to create a gall or aggravate your horse or even cause them to buck.
What about the difference? I hear this a lot of questions. These are good questions too, I like, but I hear it a lot. What your opinion is, the difference between mohair and neoprene front cinches?
I think they're both fine. I think there's a place for both of them. If you use a neoprene type cinch or any of the other synthetic type cinches, the only thing that I would say is I would recommend that you use Latigo leather billets and off billets, so you have something that's going to offer some give. The nylon or the polypropylene billets and off billets combined with a neoprene or a synthetic type cinch is not a good idea because they don't stretch. There's no give. But there's a good place for either one. Just checking them to make sure that they stay, clean and in shape. There's a place for each. Some of the advantages of a neoprene type cinch is that it is antifungal. Generally, it doesn't absorb any bacteria or promote any bacteria, and they dry quicker, and they last forever if they're taken care of. Mohair, I think, is a great product. It's been around for a long time. It's a natural fiber. They do have the ability to expand. They also do require some maintenance to take care of them. And if you take care of a mohair cinch, they'll last a very long time.
Some of the things that I've always taught as a young kid was, the mohair is real breathable. So when it gets hot, and the neoprene, it seemed like when it's hot, I was being careful to make sure that they're not cinched up so tight where they don't get to breathe there. Correct? Does that sound about right? To where in the heat, just being able to stay mindful of the neoprene to where there's able to get a little bit of air in there here and there. Is that kind of a myth, you feel like?
I think that there is some substance to what you're saying. If you're riding for extended, long periods of time, really with any cinch, mohair included, there can be too much heat and cause a gall.
Okay.
But the advantage maybe of the neoprene in some cases is that it does stay slick, and it doesn't put a horse in. Sometimes that hair in a mohair cinch can get bound up in it. It can't do that in a neoprene. But there is something to what you're saying about leaving a horse cinched tight for a long period of time, for sure. And there is the odd horse that out there that is allergic to neoprene.
Interesting. Yeah. So something to be careful, something to be mindful for and pay attention to.
Yes, sir.
What about rubber? Putting rubber on your saddle horn. I've heard there's a lot of tricks and some different theories on when, you get a new saddle, or if you take all the rubber off and it's just the horn, there's some things you can put over the saddle horn before you even put rubber on. And what are some of those theories and things that people do, and what do you think the purpose of that is?
Well, sometimes you see that they may be wrapped with mule hide. The saddle horn, a lot of the old timers used to wrap them with cotton string. And then a simple thing that we do around our place is just put some vet wrap on the saddle horn prior to putting the rubber on, because it creates a cush underneath, and it does protect it a little bit in the event that you do have your rubber wear through that bottom edge to keep from the rope really burning the leather off your horn, and you've got a metal horn sticking up there that used to be covered in leather.
That's interesting. So it can protect that leather then.
It protects the leather, but it also has an advantage to me of putting a little bit extra cush that creates more bite whenever you dally, because it's a little bit softer than the rubber is after you put the rubber on your saddle horn.
How do you like to put your rubber on the saddle horn? Some of the things that I remember, some of the mistakes that I made growing up was when I would stretch the rubber out and I would pull it around the horn, I would cross it, then put it back over the top of the horn, come back, cross it in the same spot, and then go back over the horn and cross it back in the same spot, where then I almost created a bulge right there on that same side every time, where then as I got older, I would pull the rubber on, cross it, pull it back over the horn, cross it on the outside, and I would keep to where I would cross the leather on the inside and outside. I would exchange each pull to where then that way I noticed my rubber stayed a lot more straight up and down instead of having a bulge in one way and out the other.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think it's important too because it can affect you in the run too, can it? So if you keep the rubber on the saddle horn even, I think that's important. And one of the most common mistakes you see out there, and you see it all the time, is people don't put enough rubber on the saddle horn, or they think they've got rubber on the saddle horn, but they don't check underneath at the base where they've been dallying, and there's that hole that goes all the way to the saddle horn post. And just, checking those two things, putting enough rubber so there's a cush, and check and make sure that the base of the horn has enough rubber whenever you dally.
How tight do you like yours, or how loose?
A lot of preference, and that's kind of like saying what rope do you use or what layer of rope do you use. But generally speaking, don't put it on so hard or so tight that your saddle horn feels hard. You should be able to, whenever you squish it, be able to get some kind of a
bite,
bite or a sponge feel.
Yeah. Because that's what I've also had sometimes where my rubber I put on so tight that you can feel it's almost slick.
Yes.
Where then if you leave it a little bit loose, it seems like it's that cush or that bite that can get a hold.
Yeah, they'll take hold of your rope.
Especially at the NFR. I remember one year, my steers were so big one year at the NFR, and we were breaking them through, and my rope went to slide, and I was like, man, I can't have that happen in here, because every inch, at the Thompson matters, and so I went down there in the locker room and went and got Tilden Hooper, and I said, I need some rubber. I need some rosin. I need some rosin, and I went and got some rosin from him, and I caked it all over my saddle, and that sucker right there, I could have pulled an elephant around after I tallied. That thing got some grip to it. But it was one of those things, too, man. Sometimes on them bigger steers, once it goes to sliding, it's hard to get it stopped. So all those different ways just make sure that the horn stays safe. But I like the fact that the string and the vet wrap at the bottom of it, where it creates some cushion. I never thought about that. What about boots? So putting boots on your horses, I kind of break it down at some of my clinics as, if I'm got a sure-footed horse and slower cattle, I'm kind of just trying to find some boots that protect them just in case they misstep or, hit themselves here and there compared to, say, upper-level horses. Is there any preferences or things that you kind of look for as far as boots for one situation compared to the other?
There's a lot of options out there in boots from our brands and from others. I think one of the most important things is to use something because there's such a no-brainer, cheap form of insurance. So bell boots, they matter. How many times have you seen horses that, even with boots may, have some bruising on the back of their bulb and they're, they get off or lame. With a bell boot, you're not going to have that happen, or you're going to dang sure limit the injury if they do, overreach so badly. So that's always a no-brainer. Splint boot wise, I tend to agree with you. There are some basic styles of boots, whether it be leather or any other synthetic materials that in a basic standard splint boot that protects the splint bone of the horse's leg and maybe some sesamoid protection across the back and, just cheap form of insurance against injury because the jobs they do, whether you're going slow or fast, is pretty physical. Mm-hmm. And it's an easy way. Moving up from there, more of a 360, fully supportive, fully protected style of boot that you would have with some of the, I guess the more technical styles of boots, perhaps in a legacy or reflection of those types. Also is a pretty good protection, pretty good insurance against injury for these expensive equine athletes we ride.
Because to me, when I see things at a high level, the futurities, the breakaways, where they're just gapping them suckers open and then they got to come and stop and the drop of a hat and horses, Salinas, Cheyenne, mud, different circumstances, those flexions to me, just the way when I watch them fit, just look like, man, there's not much better support of anything that I've seen what them do. I just love the way they fold around and just put, when they cut back up underneath there, you can just tell the support that they have. Like at high level, that to me, that makes a lot of sense with how that is been designed to work, I think. And especially suspensory issues. To me, if I feel like a horse has suspensory issues, I love the way that flexion wraps around everything and supports it. Like I said, high level, I love that boot. That thing is at every one of our competitions.
They do a good job of being a 360, fully protected, fully supported boot. If you think about the injuries that you have to horses' legs in equine sports, period, team roping especially, it's a crossfire injury affecting the splint bone, maybe soft tissue from a shoe coming across hitting a tendon, or any other soft tissue in the horse's leg, and then the sesamoid from behind the horse's hind foot coming up and grabbing that. That boot particularly has a ton of protection, but it also has a ton of support. It's designed to be easy to put on and give you the right support.
Now let's talk about cleaning our stuff, because this is, I think, in the fact of, what to clean, what to look for, especially when it comes to cinches, head stalls, what equipment we want to use, to what kind of leather, oil, stuff like that. But let's just start with let's start with cinches. That's probably my biggest thing that I see is, your mohair. It seems like this time of year, the horses are shedding, starting to warm up. They're getting a lot of salt, a lot of sweat, a lot of hair buildup. What are some ways, if our cinch still has some life left in it, what are some ways that you're able to wash them off? And then when do you feel like, okay, this cinch has had enough?
Woolite. Just soak the cinch. If it's a mohair type cinch, alpaca, any of those natural fibers, just woolite. Soak them in woolite, and then you can brush them off before you soak them. Soak them in woolite, spray them down, wash them off, let them air dry. If it's a mohair type cinch that has a leather center, after it completely dries, put some oil, put some conditioner on that leather to preserve it and keep it soft and supple. And you'll be surprised how much life you can actually get out of a mohair cinch.
What about your neoprene? Is there anything more than just washing it off?
They're easy. Nylon exterior, nylon center, neoprene next to the horse. Spray, wipe them off, and you're good to go.
Good to go. What about saddle pads? So I know there's difference between, when you have some of that is it mohair underneath the felt? What goes? So like, 'cause when you have the rubber underneath, that's kind of a neoprene on some of those pads, correct? Then you have some that have that's kind of the felt. One's probably going to be easier to wash out and clean out than the other.
There are neoprene saddle pads that, again, like the cinches, you can wipe them off, wash them off pretty easy. A lot of times, the saddle pads that we use today or saddle blankets are wool or wool felt.
Okay.
And again, on those, you can wash them off, spray them off. Be surprised what you can do with a brush. Just brushing a felt pad or a saddle blanket and getting that dead hair out of there and breaking up those fibers again so that they become soft. You just want to make sure that you don't use it so long where all the dirt, debris, hair builds up in there and they get, hard and crusty, where if it's uncomfortable to you, it's probably uncomfortable to your horse.
Makes sense. Now, what about just getting, your head stalls, saddles, latigos? Now we're talking about basically just cleaning and leathering up our saddles. What are some ways that you clean your saddles as well? And what kind of oil do you also use?
If you're talking about cleaning a saddle, if you have access to it, an air hose to use the air from the hose to blow them off, to get the dust out of the creases and the tooling or whatever that you have with your saddle. And then saddle soap, all the parts, lift up the seat jockey, get underneath there, go get the saddle completely cleaned up, let it completely dry. Don't get in a rush. And then if your saddle hasn't been well maintained and it's really hard and brittle, then oil, neat's foot oil. If you're in a bind, you can use, an olive oil or something like that. Although olive oil is inviting to rodents, neat's foot oil is what I'd really recommend. Or if your saddle's in pretty good shape and you just want to get it cleaned up and take good care of it, like we all should, and for your tack and equipment, clean it up, saddle soap, wipe off the residue, and use a high quality non-detergent type of leather conditioner and condition it, and it'll keep that leather soft and supple. And leather is a porous material, so you don't ever want to put anything on the leather that's going to close up the pores.
Yeah, and just trying to get the most longevity you can out of these of your equipment and things like that. And especially it seems like the springtime was, I remember it up at home, that was the biggest time where you started checking up, because this has been a long winter. Sometimes the horses ain't been rode. Forgot to check your, just a good idea to start checking your stuff, because the jackpots are getting kicked off. The rodeos are starting to get kicked off. So it's just one of those things. I think it's a great idea to get these things checked out. And Ken, I appreciate all your knowledge. Thanks for coming on. I've learned quite a bit of it too. That's what I enjoy about some of these questions and the good breakdowns is it's important for me to understand it, for me to stay safe, and my kids, and then also doing the clinics. So I always enjoy learning from you. So thanks for all the intel.
You bet. Glad to be here.
Appreciate it. So if you guys are looking for any of this stuff, to check out NRS, you can go in their stores or get online to nrsworld.com. Thanks, everybody. Hello, everyone. If you've been wanting to get into team roping or improve your skills as a beginner header, now's your chance. Join us for the NRS Beginner Headers Only Clinic at the NRS Arena in Decatur, Texas, April 25th through the 27th. This clinic is designed just for the beginner headers up to a number 3, focusing on roping the horns, solid horsemanship, and the fundamentals you need to build confidence and stay safe while having a great time. And if you can't make it in April, we've got another clinic happening October 3rd through the 5th. So you've got another chance to get in on the action. Don't miss out. Spots fill up fast. Head over to charliecrawford.training or check the podcast description to get the link to enroll. We'll see you in Decatur.